Thanks for being on time. I was like, it's lunchtime, right? we're all trying to get here on time. I just had to run up from the Discovery Green. My name is Enrique Arce-Larreta, and this is Alison Bulson. We're here from Team 3006, Red Rock Robotics. We're doing our talk today on teacher opportunities. Just by show of hands, who of us are teachers here? Most of us. And then who of us are students? There's Team 3006 over here. That's awesome. So maybe some of you guys are here for the Dean's Summit, which is the Dean's List Awards. And I talk about that as an experience that we had. So we'll talk about that last, but we will start with the DoD STEM Ambassador stuff that I did, since most of us are teachers here. Allison's going to cover the Air Force leadership experience that she was able to do a couple years ago. The format for this is we'll talk for a little while about the experience, and then we'll have Q&A for each section. And yeah, but thanks for coming and being here. No. So maybe you're the clicker. Okay, so DoD STEM ambassadors. This is, I was lucky to be part of the first ever teacher cohort program of this, which started 2 years, it was 2020, it was the year of 2020. And COVID had canceled just about everything. I believe we were told that like the DoD had some extra money because they were not using it on programs that were canceled. So they thought it would be a great idea to start up the DoD STEM Ambassador Program. And they asked, and I keep saying DoD, like I was like, I gotta tell them what DoD is right away because they might not even know what that is. So that's a Department of Defense, and there's lots of acronyms everywhere. So Department of Defense STEM Ambassador Program. So do you want to do next slide? Thank you. So what is a DoD STEM Ambassador? DoD STEM Ambassadors, this is right off the website, basically work together to create, it's a teacher cohort. In 2020, I was part of approximately 30 teachers from different DoD STEM programs. We got together and worked on our projects to help our STEM students. In order to apply, you had to be a member of a DoD STEM program, and I'm going to give you a list of those in a second. FIRST Robotics is a DoD STEM program, so I applied with FIRST Robotics, and I was selected as the FIRST Robotics representative for DoD STEM. When they're doing the application, attention was paid to teachers who had a track record of helping underrepresented groups. At my school, I had done a lot of work for many years building up a robotics program, and so I think that's why I was selected. So this is a list of the DoD STEM programs. Here's FIRST down here. There's a lot of these programs come from all through K through 12. Some serve elementary schools, some serve college students, some serve like middle school, so like you're probably familiar, like as a high school teacher, I was really only familiar with things in either high school level, like science fair that happens at our school, or math counts that happens in middle school. But some of these other programs, I'm like, San Diego College, what's that? You know, like, so it was interesting to sort of meet people from all over the United States and sort of collaborate on all those. Yeah, so we have TIES is like the helped out with the work that we collaborated with. Tiger Woods Foundation was actually kind of a fun one to learn. I actually made really good friends with the Tiger Woods people, and this was like the year that Tiger Woods had his car accident. So it was kind of funny because we were like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen at your foundation? You know, so it was pretty funny. What did I do? So we have each one of the teacher DoD STEM fellows develops curriculum for their classes. I developed a new unit on computational programming, and like students have been doing a lot of machine learning stuff. So I wanted to do a unit where I incorporated Jupyter Notebooks. So these were 6 lessons that I developed. I made a YouTube playlist and shared this with the entire planet. Yeah, so no computational background was required. That was like sort of one of my ideas, was like, we've got to be able to hit everybody with a computational lesson. So if you guys want to take a picture and look at this YouTube playlist later, that'd be awesome. So what was the idea that I had with these lessons? Basically, 4 things. I had tried to do some like computational work in my science classes before, and what I had found was that kids really struggled if they didn't have like a growth mindset. They basically like, even like really, really intelligent kids, I teach like 7th and 8th grade gifted kids, and I found that they were like super struggling if they couldn't overcome like, oh, I don't know what to do next. In the line of code, it's like it's giving me some sort of error message. So my whole, career as a computer engineer is like ending right now because I can't, make the program work. And I'm like, no, that's gonna happen every single time you get on a program. You're gonna like have to debug it constantly. So I wanted to make all the lessons like growth mindset and also inquiry based. So what that means is a lot of the projects were very open-ended. So the students had a lot of like ability to select their own path. It wasn't just like, solve this exact math problem to get this exact math solution. It was more like, figure out a problem that you can do and try to solve it by yourself. And you've got to have it be interesting to yourself. So I also stayed away from like step-by-step guides. I just had quick videos like, here's how you basically use the software. Be creative and trying to figure out how to use it to solve something for yourself. And also like with that, the objectives were really simple. So they were supposed to just design one product per lesson. So then at the end of the class period, the kids could turn something in that they did. Okay, so why pick Jupyter Notebooks? Probably nobody here. Has anyone, raise your hand if you've heard of a Jupyter Notebook, right? Like, notice there's only the kids are raising their hands, right? One teacher, we had one teacher raise their hand. So it is, it's not misspelled, by the way. I was like, they don't know how to spell Jupyter. Something's wrong with this program, right? So Jupyter is Python. It's a Python environment. And as of like 2 years ago, it was, I think Google started sponsoring a platform. So now if you go to your like Google Drive and try to open a new Google Doc or a new Google spreadsheet, you can also add Jupyter Notebook. So that's called a Google collaboratory environment. So you can actually start like, it's as easy as opening up a new Google Doc is how you open up a Jupyter Notebook. And you can do all the functionality of Google Docs. So you can share links with your documents with other people. You can collaborate with teams really effectively that way. You can save everything to the cloud. And everybody can have a free Google account. Basically, everybody does. So that's nice. I don't have to buy MATLAB or some like computational software that costs a bunch of money for my kids. It's totally free. This is also extremely popular at the university level. Everybody's using Jupyter Notebooks in undergraduate programs and can process large data sets. That's one of the big things about it that people use. Okay, so here's my like first lesson that I made. It's like just how to do, a lot of it's like pretty simple, like how you define variables, use markup language, define a function, and then they solve some basic calculations. The idea I had was to do this for my general physics class. So they're just solving kinematic problems in the first lesson, and they're doing this through like variables and assigning things. Lesson 2 is just plotting a simple graph, because that's just probably the most common thing they do in high school, is they get a data set from somewhere and then plot a graph. So the nice thing about this, though, is we can actually use Google's data sets for free, and so the activity actually has them go onto Google's machine learning repository and search for a fun data set that they can do. So I don't even know what this graph was. This was like city populate, like, so this is year, and this is percentage of people who live in cities. So that was just a data set that I did as an example. But the kids had all kinds of kind of funny graphs that they were able to personalize. Like one kid really liked chess, so he like plotted chess openings versus like winning rate, and then some other kids plotted COVID statistics because they were interested in that in 2020. So it was fun to find different data sets that kids were able to create on their own. So lesson 3, this was sort of like my IB background. So I'm an IB, International Baccalaureate teacher, and they always have to make lines of best fit for their IB coursework. So I was like, oh, I'm going to put this in the IB class, so I better show them how to do line of best fit. So that lesson 3 was like linear regression, and it was sort of like, okay, you have your data set, let's see what you can use to predict. So it was kind of an add-on activity to lesson 2. And there was this extension for some of the kids who were able to finish this real fast, where you could linearize your data set, which is also an IB curriculum thing that they love to put on those exams. Okay, lesson 4 comes from sort of my background in particle physics, which is totally a different realm of my existence. So I do FIRST Robotics, but with Alison, we also do a lot of particle physics work. We are teachers in, we collaborate with QuarkNet, which is a local it's a national particle physics organization. And like raise your hand if you know what QuarkNet is, probably, yeah, a few of us. So we're like the weird physicists we go to Fermilab in Chicago, and we actually had a crazy amazing opportunity 2 or 3 years ago to go to Switzerland and CERN and visit the Large Hadron Collider out there with our high school students. So that was a crazy, awesome opportunity. So having that background and also having the IB background, I wanted to have a programming lesson where they actually took CERN's data sets and used those to find particles. Now that was going to be like the main part of the unit. So in order to get there, we had to go first into what histograms were. And so we do these activities where the kids make histograms using just rolling dice or other random things. I think this was like penny masses. So they had to mass pennies and make a histogram. And this was a fun activity because we usually, it's like, what you're seeing is the computational side, but I also like to do a lot of outdoor education. So we would go out and have the kids like chalkboard the sidewalk with histograms, and then they would come in and program. Because like one thing I noticed about the programming unit was that the kids got real bored sitting in class every day programming. So I had to mix that up. Once they knew what histograms were, they then went on and go to the CERN website, download the data sets, which are these large files that you can't process in Microsoft Excel. They're too big. But they put them into their Jupyter Notebooks, and in about, 10 minutes, they're finding particles. And because they've got the histogram background, and they're able to figure this out. And there's actually, CERN published a YouTube series on how the Higgs boson was discovered a few years ago, where they explain all of this. So I didn't have to like reinvent the wheel there. I just used the resources. I'm like, oh, look, this is how they're using histograms to discover particles. The last one was earth science. So I was teaching earth science a couple of years ago in 2020, and I had the students had to make like topographical maps of everything, and I was like, oh, this is kind of monotonous. Let's just do this on the computer, right? So we were able. So they input their X and Y data, and then they, in the end, will make like contour graphs of everything. So this is like the typical earth science problem that you see in like 9th grade science, and I had them create these isolines for that. And this was just my general 9th grade students that did this. Okay, so those were the 6 lessons that I developed for the DoD STEM Fellowship with kind of help with my other teacher colleagues. we did this for like different kinds of students. So I had like 7th grade gifted students. I had high school seniors working on this, and then I had some 9th graders on it as well. So it's kind of all over the place in my brain all the time, because it's like we also had to do, I incorporated it with the IB stuff. What did they like? So they really liked being able to pick their own problems. So all the frustration that we have with technology and like programming, they didn't like that so much, but but they really enjoyed being able to do kind of their own projects. What are some challenges? This was, not everybody has a Google account at my school. Like, I'm not on a Google Classroom, so I had to get them all to sign up. And then some of them don't have cell phones and can't verify that they're actually trying to make a Google account. And so it becomes like tricky to get everybody on a Google. But also like, I also had a lot of kids crying in my class. So I thought that was like, I don't usually, usually I'm the science teacher that has a hands-on activity and everybody does fine with it. And even math, right? They can do the math problems. They're not going to cry that often. But like, if you are used to getting 100% on the tests, and then you can't figure out that you're missing a comma or something, you start to cry, I guess. But I think that's good for them. Failure is okay. So this is like, if you want to scan this is like the YouTube playlist for the lessons.
Computer programming makes me cry a lot.
True.
Also.
Okay, and just really quickly, I'm going to go over, so this is like the project I did with the STEM ambassador thing, but what else happened there? We had monthly meetings for the whole year. What happened in those 3-hour Zoom meetings in 2020? Well, we got to make friends. Big component of it was, getting in breakout rooms with other teachers, working on your projects together. We also had like homework every month where we would read papers or do other projects that would help us become better teachers. And so it was sort of like a PD with these national teachers. And we had cool guest speakers occasionally, such as Louis. Louis was here, so you did a talk. So raise your hand, Louis. We won't single you out. We know we hate you. So this guy here is probably maybe the most responsible for having the DoD STEM Ambassador Program. I don't know if that's true or not, but I know that you helped put that there to some degree. So we did have cool guest speakers that helped us. We could do Q&A, and they were like national speakers. Louis with the Department of Defense in I want to say DC, but I'm not sure if that's where you work. And so, because DoD is kind of all over that DC area. And it was just fun to get some insight on what's happening nationally with Department of Defense and STEM education. So one of the other things we had to do was a blog post. So I decided to just do an alumni study of our FRC program. And just really quickly, I'll go through this, and then I'll turn the time over to Alison. But we had, so our team was a FIRST Robotics team. We've been around for about 10 years. I guess it's longer now. I can't remember how old I am anymore either, but it's been about 10 or 11 years. And I emailed out all the people it's weird trying to get a hold of old high school students who've graduated because their emails have changed. And maybe they didn't even have an email in high school, because back in 2012, no one had an email. So I actually found a lot of them through Facebook. Because back in 2012, Facebook was hip, right? And so I remember going on Facebook and be like, oh, I know that kid's the captain, and all of his friends, he's still friends with all of his teammates. So I'm just messaging everybody I can find. But we got 28 alumni who replied back. A lot of them had gone to prestigious universities and local universities. I ended up focusing, so what were some of the results? We had lots of current college students, because we had, couldn't find a lot of kids from the early years, but it was a lot easier to find kids who had just graduated within 3 or 4 years. Pretty much everybody that replied to the survey was a STEM major, so that was kind of nice to see. most of them wrote that FIRST was the most hands-on STEM activity in K through 12. Like, I asked them a bunch of questions, and what I found was that, like, some of them were like, what did you think of FIRST versus, like, science fair versus other programs you did in high school? And they were like, oh, yeah, it's the one that was most, like, hands-on. That came up many times. And then we had a few alumni that were working in industry. So we had a few of these, like, Fortune 500 companies. So we did, like, here's AJ. He's a computer science graduate from the University of Utah. And this was a kid that I sort of was like, okay, I didn't think you'd become a robotics engineer, but that makes sense, right? And he was in FRC for like about a year at West. But yeah, if you want to hit play, Allison will hear his research currently. I don't know if that will work. There's like it's okay. So yeah, we have a couple videos. We don't have the greatest internet in the room, so we tried to just put them on. Yeah, welcome back to high school. This is like.
Where is this screen split? I can't find the mouse. Okay, it is. I'm having some. There we go. Do we have sound?
We won't have the video. Anyway, so this was a YouTube video I found. He's working at the Llama Lab at the University of Utah, or he was when he was at University of Utah, and he built a robot for a senior design project using machine learning algorithms, which is stuff that I'm teaching now with the high school kids, but not when he was there. Let's see, next slide. Sweet. David Elliott was our team captain in like the year with the yoga balls. I can't even remember the game names. I feel bad. For FIRST Robotics, people are like, oh, is it on there? I can't. Aerial cyst. That's right. Aerial cyst with the big truss. It's all a blur, right? If you ask me about the games, I'm like, the year we threw yoga balls everywhere. He ended up going to Caltech and JPL, and now he works as a mechanical engineer for Starlink, which are those things that will give us internet all over the planet, right, for Elon Musk. So it was cool to see that he was still going and doing all these things. Bizarrely enough, his dad came and returned, he came to West High last year and returned all these old robot parts. He's like, David had these in our garage, and they were like these Sims from like, 10 years ago. I'm like, thank you for bringing these back. Like, what are we gonna do with these? He's converted all of the motors and stuff over. And Sophie Bide was, so she graduated recently. She's up at the University of Arizona. She actually went to CERN with us too. So that was kind of a fun thing for her. She wrote, what was her quote? Participation in FIRST is what allowed me to discover my passion for hands-on work, which is now a large part of why I'm doing an engineering degree. Yeah, we saw her grow because she started on the all-girls team we had in 7th grade. We didn't have a lot of girls those first few years, so I did all of this stuff at my school to support underrepresented kids, including women. And so we did an all-girls team, and then she eventually became captain of the FRC team when she was a high school student. And then when the governor of the state of Utah asked her, why did you decide to do this particle physics stuff? She was like, well, I had already done robotics. It couldn't be that much harder, right? Because the governor was like, what did you guys know about particle physics? She's like, I don't know anything, but it couldn't have been hard, So now she's doing really challenging work at the University of Arizona, and it's fun to see her online. Davis Unruh, so this guy was like marketing captain one year, and I guess he was a scientist now at Argonne National Laboratory, but it was like, this was sort of just like, it was interesting to see that like some students had done leadership activities, some had done like hardware engineering or software. Davis had been really into like the marketing stuff and fundraising. So it was kind of fun to see him also become a scientist. So I was like, oh, he's not like super technical, but now he's an actual scientist. So that's actually kind of funny to see that happening. Rebecca, so this is the last slide for DoD STEM, but we have, how do I apply for this cool program? So Rebecca's actually here somewhere. There you go. Do you want to quickly say what the timeline is for that?
Yeah, so the application isn't open just yet but I'd love to take names and email addresses of anybody who'd be interested in applying, and we'll be opening that next week, and I'll send the link to you directly and with more details about what the opportunity includes. So that just kind of gives a rundown. Yeah, so we expect that to open next week, and then it will be open probably through through the month of May. So I'll leave a piece of paper and a pen, and we'll get, or if you have a business card, that'd be fine too. I can just take that.
So Rebecca's going to post that, and then, of course, you can talk to her if you're interested in doing it. For me, what it was like an opportunity for me to develop my learning, and they give you a generous stipend to do that. So it's like you can finally allocate some time to actually working on whatever project you want to work on to help improve your lessons. Thank you. Any questions on DoD STEM Ambassador stuff? Any questions? Sweet. Thank you, guys.
So I'm Alison Bulson, and I also teach physics at West High School, and I'm also pretty deeply involved in our FRC Team 3006. And in 2019, I had the great good fortune to be invited to participate in the first Air Force leadership experience. So I can't speak for the whole program. I can only speak for my own personal experience. And as far as I know, none of the Air Force leadership folks are here to give their perspective. But it was a really wonderful 3 days, 4 nights at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Daytona. You can do the next slide, I think. So there were 24 teacher mentors, and my understanding is that you must be a teacher and a mentor both in order to be eligible for the program. There were 2 main aspects of the program. We had a formal leadership training kind of seminar led by Air Force personnel, and then piles of visits and tours through the Air Force labs and development centers. All of our costs are paid for by the U.S. Air Force, so travel, lodging, food, etc. So, as Enrique mentioned, it was nice to have funding to be able to focus on the experience. You can go to the next slide. So, I don't know how much information you actually want, and I don't know if the same training will apply to current and future versions of this program, but we had formal training in the Profession of Arms Center of Excellence, which is one of the Air Force's leadership training programs. And it was quite comprehensive. This went through all 3 days of the experience. And the focus was really in tune with at least my personal teaching philosophy, which is to say that there was an emphasis there on building trust with your students and other mentors, and how having trusting relationships probably obviously fosters a good working environment and collaboration. There was a lot of emphasis on improving communication skills and styles, and how to be an effective communicator. We also had a brief look at the 4 Lenses program, again in the same vein of information based on the Myers-Briggs personality type indicator, and again communication and improving your interactions with the folks you are trying to be a leader of. Excuse the grammar. Next slide. So some of the highlights of the tours, and this year will not be at Wright-Patterson, but we saw some of the work they do in human performance and the research laboratory. The research laboratory for me was quite interesting, and everywhere we went there would be a curtain behind which we could not see. So there was lots of mystery and things they could not show us. But my favorite, I think, was probably the C-17 cargo plane, because from a little kid from the time I watched Top Gun, I thought I might like to be a fighter pilot, so that was about as close as I ever got. And then, of course, some nice guided tours of the Air Force Museum. You can go to the next slide. One of my favorite parts, in addition to the tours, was that I had the great fortune of having a mentor from my state in my cohort, and not only from my state, but a local team, and we got along like a house on fire. And so I started to develop a network of other mentors, like-minded, and we lost touch a little bit, but got back in touch 2 or 3 weeks ago at our local regional, and so we've been emailing back and forth, and I mentioned that I am not a fan of public speaking, and I needed to talk about the first Air Force experience, and that led to like 4 2-page long emails back and forth, and she wanted me to share that when she thinks back to the experience, the thing she takes away most was the connections with other mentors, and that she never expected to make such good friends during a 3-day experience. And I think it's also important to note that she and I had similar experiences in terms of having imposter syndrome coming into the first night welcome dinner of a room full of mentors of famous teams, and neither of our teams are particularly well known in FIRST. Not that we don't think you're amazing, but we're not, heritage team in the Hall of Fame, but it didn't really matter after that first sort of, hors d'oeuvres session. Everyone was approachable. The stories shared were invaluable, and like she said, the connections were surprising and deep. So it turns out that you can still apply for this year. It will be in Florida this year. I put links in the PowerPoint, but that doesn't help you very much. But you can, I actually found those links just by Googling through firstinspires.org and Air Force experience. So yeah, you've got a bit of time. Highly recommend, 10 out of 10. And I feel like that was all I wanted to say about the experience. Do you have any questions for me? I'm going to go, oh yes, Enrique. Oh, the swag, I forgot to talk about the swag. Yeah, oh my gosh, that first night we had this amazing dinner. And at each of our, we were assigned seats, like a very formal dinner. And they gave us these huge, like official Air Force backpacks with like our name tags and t-shirts and shirts and hats and just stuff. The hat I still wear every time I go hiking. I mean, cool swag. At least do it for the swag, yeah. But off topic, I want to also talk about our interest in particle physics, because if you're science teachers, you might be interested in this. And you can tell Marcus I'm now promoting. The program we work with most in particle physics is a competition through CERN called Beamline for Schools. The deadline for that has passed for this year, but in the competition, students propose a particle physics experiment given some structure based on what's available at CERN at the time, or for the time we were traveling, it was at Daisy in Hamburg, but even just preparing the proposal is a really interesting experience for students, and they learn a ton. And in terms of developing strong STEM students and showing them alternate views into life in STEM, I love FIRST Robotics, but this Beamline for Schools competition is also really worthwhile. So that is all I have to say about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Switch. So we have like 10 minutes left to do the Dean's List Summit. Raise your hand if you're interested in going to Dean Kamen's house and hanging out. Just a few of us. Yeah, it was cool. So that we actually got to do that in 2019, pre-COVID. So what is First Dean's List Award? If you're an FTC or FRC and you're a sophomore or junior, you can apply. Your team nominates you, and then you become a semifinalist. When you go to your local regional competition or state competition, you can become a finalist and attend World Championships. 10 First Dean's List winners are selected for both FRC and FTC at the World Championships. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So our path, we sponsored an all-Hispanic team at our school, 13536 Respado Robotics. We nominated the captain, Raul Rodriguez. So he was semifinalist at that point. Some notable things that he did, he was the captain of his team. He did a little bit of everything, programming, hardware, electrical, and he was first in his family to go to college. He was interviewed at the Utah State Championships and was selected as a Dean's List finalist. During that interview process, the judges do get an opportunity at your local regional to type up some supporting essays about the student during the interviews. After that, he was selected as a winner here in Houston a few years ago. So, yeah. Let's just go because we are running out of time. This is him winning the award. There's Dean Kamen at the luncheon giving him the award. It actually worked. That was crazy. That's okay. That's okay. There is Dean. Can you just go on? We don't have time to watch the show. But anyway, so the Dean's List Award, what do you get for winning the award? So at the time, we got to attend the Dean's Summit weekend with one chaperone. Since his parents couldn't go, they asked me to go with him, so I got to go for the weekend. Basically, they give you a free round-trip ticket to anywhere in the United States, which you then use to go to the Dean's Summit if you're available. Some people are not available, so they're going out of town with their family or something, so then they could use that trip somewhere else. WPI sponsors a summer camp or lets them attend their summer camp. It's a week-long STEM camp, and basically half the students attended that immediately after the Dean's Summit or immediately before the Dean's Summit because their flight is basically the same place. New Hampshire and Worcester are right next door to each other. So, and that's what Raul did. And then you get a swag bag full of cool stuff, like polo shirts. Let's say you're a Dean's List winner. And yeah. Okay, so this took place Wednesday through Friday in July. We flew in on Wednesday. We had a meet and greet at that night at the hotel. The next morning, there was a bunch of events. We went to MIT to visit the campus. Dean Kamen house tour that evening, followed by the Supporter Summit dinner at his house. Friday, we toured FIRST headquarters, DECA, which is Dean Kamen's engineering company. They filmed stuff for the reveal videos and then did sponsor input. And then on Saturday, the Dean's List winners went their own ways. Some of them went to Worcester, some of them went other places, back home and otherwise. Okay, so the Dean's List sponsored by MIT, Yale, and WPI. Each one of these colleges recruits the students by buying them dinner or lunch and sending admissions counselors. So we actually toured MIT. They gave us the spiel of why you should go to MIT, which was fun. And that was all of one morning. So WPI also wants you to go to their school, obviously. You're a Dean's List winner, so they want the best STEM engineering students in the country and in the world, right? So they gave them the week-long college camp. That was basically you live up there, it's an immersion experience. You have a college major and a college minor, and then you go to classes and you have a faculty advisor. So they want it to feel like a little university camp. At the Yale admissions dinner, so I'm watching all of this happen from the teacher perspective. So I'm asking the admissions counselors, how do I write recommendation letters for someone who wants to go to Yale? Because we have a lot of students who want to get admitted there. And so it was very useful to me to learn all of these things. Here's my notes that I took from that dinner. And then how to coach students for Ivy League college applications. Dean Kamen's house, so we could not take photos of this because it's someone's personal house. They want photo. So we took photos outside and with Dean Kamen, but it's like a museum in there. He lives in a museum, basically. There's a lot of cool exhibits in his house and artifacts. And you get a cool tour of all of these things. First headquarters was the next day, which was also it was very interesting to me because I had been coaching and mentoring for years, and so I'm oh, I remember this game. It's Steamworks, and there's the yoga ball here. So people's the game pieces are all over the offices up there, and people use them for different things. So if you ever get a chance to visit FIRST headquarters, it's always kind of fun. From the teacher's perspective, what I saw was like each one of their like rooms was named after a famous scientist. So there's like the Albert Einstein meeting room at FIRST Robotics that you can go plan your next thing at. And I thought it was fun that they had Krista McAuliffe was a room. So it's like, oh, that's nice. They picked a teacher scientist, right, to name something after. This was when they were filming for the reveal. So every year there's a new game, and during kickoff, oftentimes they ask the Dean's List winners to participate. This is actually the lower level where we ate lunch with Dean Kamen on the Saturday, and then took a tour of the engineering facility. And it's the first floor is like kind of like the place where they do a lot of like demonstrations and things, and you can see some Hall of Fame robots and stuff that they have down there. So in summary, like Dean's List is a wonderful opportunity for students. They get a lot of college outreach from the elite universities that sponsor the award. But there is two other big components. The sponsorship summit, which happens that night, is a way for the Dean's List kids to sort of interface with sponsors of FIRST Robotics. And so like they get all the big sponsors down there, and they get all the kids to converse with each other. The sponsors want input from the students. So like when they're putting together the kit of parts, right, for FRC, there's people who donate stuff into there, and they ask the Dean's List kids, what did you guys like about that kit of parts? You know, did you not use this part or whatever? And so they get input from the Dean's List kids to help them put that together for the next year. And I'm always like, we need more stuff in there. You know, I was like, but yeah. Anyway, so yeah, and they also, get to see what's going on in the state-of-the-art engineering space at DECA. Anyway, so I think that's what we have today for Dean's List. Do you guys have any questions about the summit or anything else that we've talked about today? I can't let you go unless I get one question. Someone's going to ask me a question. Louis. We entered the contest. Well, I am part of QuarkNet, and the story is it's an NSF. NSF funds a program for like 5 U.S. teachers to go to CERN every year for an international high school teacher program. So I was picked one year to do that after applying like 6 times in a row. Finally got in, and then when I was there, I met the Beamline for Schools people, and it's an international competition. And I thought, oh, I can win this. This is something, something we can do super easy. And then I went back to West High. We had like the science fair champion at our school. She won the entire science fair, like ISEF. I was like, you've got to win this for us. You're really good at writing essays. And so we got her to write the essay. And I was like, this is what we're going to do, because I think I know what they want. I talked to the guy, and we did everything to try and win, and we got crushed. We got crushed in that competition. I was like, oh, there's no way we can ever win this. We're up against like the whole world. There's no way it will ever happen. So I wanted to give up on that dream. But the kids kept doing it year after year. And then after like 3 or 4 years, they would come in and say, hey, can you help us out? And I'm like, I don't have time for that. I have to do another robot team. Sorry, you guys can sit in the back and brainstorm, but I'm not going to help you. And the kids wrote the winning proposal that year. That was a completely student-led team. It was really awesome. We beat 47 other countries. There was 170 submissions. We were the first American team to ever win the competition. And still, there hasn't been a U.S. team that's ever won other than us. And then, so now Allison's like trying to win every year. I'm like, okay.
No, I can't say that I ever expect to win twice, but I will say that it's absolutely worthwhile just to participate in the competition. Never mind, the amazing trip and seeing kids perform in an experiment. Just having them research enough into particle physics of their own interest and have to put together this proposal is an amazing learning process.
Yeah,
every year.
It's more about the learning process now. We've got it down to where like we now do a camp kind of at the beginning of the year and teach them a little bit, as much as they need for basic particle physics, and then they kind of pick a that's their starting point to start their research experience to learn how to do it. We are trying to do around 8 or 9, but we were able to take 8, I think, that year. 8, so that was fun. And they were like, most of them were on the robot team. At least half were like, all but a couple were on the robot team. And so they, because they started getting their friends are like, oh, we'll just get the software guy to come and all this other stuff. You had a question back there. Someone had their hand up. Will our Dean's List winner win? I don't know. It's not for me to answer. Sure, he could win. You know what was funny was I was like, every year that I have a Dean's List recommendation, I always think like, why shouldn't they win? I feel like all the Dean's List finalists are all amazing people, and how do you choose like a winner? It's like almost random. I think everybody's worthy, right? And it goes to speaking to you, like just because you're not on the Hall of Fame team doesn't mean that you can't like participate in this mentor experience as much as you should. We're all capable people. Thank you guys for coming and listening to us talk for an hour. All right, thank you.